Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kinship Care Town Hall with Children's Service Society and the Kinship Care Coalition. We're very happy to spend some of our time today here with you to discuss some of the issues, strengths, and special needs of families that are raising the child of a relative. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Encarni Gallardo. I am the Executive Director of Children's Service Society, and I have the pleasure to start this town hall. You can join us on Facebook if you want to, and I hope that you can enjoy the conversation that we will be sharing today. Children's Service Society is the oldest child welfare agency in the state of Utah, serving families and children since 1884. In 2001-2002, we started to have a conversation with some grandparents that found themselves raising their grandchildren. Based on their needs and their suggestion, pretty quickly, we had a program and a curriculum for them that will address those things that they were actually having struggles with. Since then, we have been helping kinship care families, along with other agencies and organizations in the state of Utah. I would like to recognize those that are part of the Kinship Care Coalition. We have 211 of Utah. We have Grand Families Program from the Wasatch Behavioral Health, the Utah Division of Aging and Adult Services, the Utah Division of Child and Family Services, Utah Division of Indian Affairs, Utah Foster Care, Voices for Utah Children, and Children's Service Society. We have representatives from all those organizations, and I have to tell you how important it is for us to work all together as a community to really address the issues that these families have. I want to make this really short because this is not about me, not about us, CSS. It is about the families that are going to talk to you today. They're going to share very personal experiences and what they have gone through to be in the place that they are today. One of the things that I would like to do is say thank you to you for joining us today, for being part of this conversation, for being open to learn a little bit more, and for recognizing that this is something that is happening in our community. I would like you to know that September is Kinship Care Month, and that's why we're doing this and we're celebrating all together. I would like to say thank you to the coalition for their support and their collaboration during this town hall. Thank you especially from my heart to you as families today for sharing your experience. I know sometimes it's hard to express what you have gone through, but this is a good opportunity for others to learn about what is happening with some of our families and what are your strengths. I believe that you have strengths that we have never talked about. And I would like to hear about that as well. And my last words are for my staff. They have put a lot of work in getting this all together for tonight. We are not experts at technology. We're not experts at social media, and we're not experts at Zoom. So if something goes wrong, we ask you to be forgiving because we're trying our best and we're trying to do a job that we never thought we were going to do in this world of pandemic and COVID, right? So hopefully it will go well. You'll be able to see the whole thing. We will be able to be connected all this time. And I am very grateful for technology these days. I think I talk to more people from home now that I have talked before from the office. So please be forgiven. Thank you. A shout out to my staff for all their work. A shout out to all the coalition and their members. And to you families, thank you so much from my heart. And I'm gonna turn the time over to Bakal Hinks. She is the Grand Families Kinship Care Program Director in Children's Service Society.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Encarni, for that wonderful introduction. And yes, please bear with us through our journey into a Zoom town hall. It is our first time attempting this, so hopefully it goes well, and we'll laugh about it later when we see our hiccups if they happen. So I am the program director for our Ground Families program, and I have been asked to facilitate a discussion today with our kinship family members that are going to be on our panel. And I would like to start by allowing them some time to give a little brief introduction of who they are, and who they're raising or who they were raised by, and as well as kind of a little bit of information about what brought them into a kinship family relationship. Lisa and Bert, do you want to go ahead and share with us kind of your experience and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lisa. This is my husband, Bert. We are currently have the blessing of raising my nephew, who is 5, and his infant brother. We have been involved in foster care and kinship placement for a while. We actually have 7 boys of our own. 3 of them have been adopted through the Foster Care Foundation, that we were able to take them in. And just fantastic, phenomenal kids. We absolutely adore them. So my brother and my little nephew's mother have struggled with substance abuse ever since he was just itty bitty tiny. And so when it came down to, you know, parents being incarcerated and little Mason needing a place to go, we definitely needed someone to step up and see what they can do. So we were contacted and asked if we would provide placement for my nephew.
Taking just kinship placement.
Yeah, so we had him just like Bert said, we had him just for kinship placement. So it was just having him in our home, which was awesome. We loved it. And then when his baby brother was born, tested positive for methamphetamines and things like that, they asked if we could take him as well. So we've been blessed and fortunate to have the opportunity to have this little kiddo in our home too. So we have 9 boys between the ages of 17 and newborn little bitty. So if we start drooling on ourselves or acting kind of crazy, we apologize. But it's just been a huge blessing, a huge change, and a lot of adjustments have to be made, but definitely totally well worth it. And we do it again in a heartbeat. So.
It's hard to start over when you're done with the little part of your life. So going back.
But we love it.
Absolutely. Holy cow, you guys, 11 people in your family, and you guys are awake at 7 o'clock at night to join us on this town hall. So I'm giving you kudos for just having that.
Hopefully it'll stay quiet. We're hoping.
I know.
We hear kiddos, unfortunately, all the time on Zoom. That's kind of our new situation in this world, right? We always get visitors. So totally understand. Thank you for sharing that, Lisa and Bert. Natalie, would you like to take some time and kind of explain your situation?
Yes, I would love to. Hey, y'all, my name is Natalie Clark. I am from Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm 22 years old, and I do use she, her pronouns. So I have about 6 years of split up experience in the foster care system, in foster homes, specifically through foster, proctor, group homes, different congregate living facilities, different things like that. And then I spent also about the same amount of time with my biological grandmother. She raised me during the time that I was kind of in kinship situation with her. And that's pretty much who made me the woman I am today. I'm currently working on my bachelor's at the University of Utah, bachelor's in social work. So I can use my lived experience to help improve the child welfare as a whole. And I'm a 2020 Foster Club All-Star and Utah Advisory Council President. So I do represent the state of Utah foster teens in transition to adult living in TAO. So I'm just really excited to get to know all of you and spend some time having some great conversations.
Awesome. Natalie, can you explain a little bit what Utah Foster Care All-Star is? Just really quick.
Absolutely. So Foster Club is an organization that allows youth with lived experience in the foster care system to all gather together due to an intensive internship program where we learn leadership skills and different ways to advocate for the foster care population. It's been an absolute blessing to my life. It created a family that I had never had. And they are pretty much the reason I have the opportunity to speak today, share my story, and just advocate for foster care all over.
Awesome. Thank you, Natalie. That's so cool. And it's so amazing that you get to go and help other kids, right? And that have gone through going through what you went through.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Allie, you are who I see next on our fun little Brady Bunch screen. So if you would like to go ahead and give us a little introduction of who you are.
Yeah, okay, so my name's Allie. I am 21 years old. I'll be 22 tomorrow, actually. And I am a nursing student at the University of Utah, and I work up there as a medical assistant as well. I have guardianship of my 2-year-old niece, Kaya, and she has been with me since June of 2019. So it's been about 1.5 years now. And our introduction into kinship care was very informal. At first, she just started staying with me on like Wednesdays while her mom was at work. And both of her parents have struggled with substance abuse for the past 10 years of their life. And so they kind of started to relapse. And it got worse and worse until she was about 7 months old. And we just decided that they weren't in a place to take care of her anymore. And so we had like a verbal agreement where I was going to take her and like give her back after a month when her mom was in rehab. And then it's just been pushed back like 1 month at a time for 1.5 years now. So still kind of informal, but Grand Families has actually helped us a ton. They've like we got guardianship and they helped us fill out all the paperwork and everything like that. So we're just taking it 1 month at a time. And kind of like Lisa and Bert said, it's been a huge blessing to be able to be involved in something like that. So we have a lot of fun. Yeah, and we're grateful to be here. I'm grateful.
Awesome, Allie. Well, I'm sure little niece is somewhere in that house, so you can say we.
That's all I say now is me.
All right, thank you so much, Allie. And Jeannie, would you like to take a minute to kind of explain your situation and introduce yourself? I'm going to ask you to unmute, Jeannie. We knew we'd have a hiccup. Let's see if this works.
Okay.
There we go. We got it.
My name is Jeannie Pettit. I am 64 years old, and I have my granddaughter, Bailey. Bailey has been with me since she was born. So we are fortunate that Bailey never really had to suffer the trauma of going back and forth because she has always been in our care from day one. Essentially, my daughter became addicted, began drug use at the age of 14. By the time she was 16, she was addicted to heroin. She has been in 5 or 6 different treatment centers, sometimes as much as 18 months at a time. And ultimately, within 2 weeks, will always go back to using and relapsing. We determined when Bailey was 2 years old that it was better not to have her mother around and for her to see her mother at all, because she was bringing in things like tuberculosis, hepatitis C, sexually transmitted diseases, MRSA, cognition problems, and some extreme health issues along with mental illness issues. So we have made it through with the assistance of the school district, who put Bailey into early intervention, which is a wonderful program. And we have become a family, not traditional, but a good family. I did have 4 children, and I did adopt 4 children as well.
So yeah, Jeannie, those adoptions, you also were a foster care parent. So you're not only a grandma raising a grandchild, yes, but you also were a foster parent.
Right.
Right. Very cool. Very admirable work to be able, both Bert and Lisa and Jeannie doing foster care and kinship. Wow. So as something I noticed as you guys were telling your stories, a lot of what we are seeing and what we see in our program as well is that most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the children are coming into care of a relative or having to go live with a relative because of underlying substance use issues. I think we all said that there was something related to substance use in your stories. Is that true?
Yes.
So, I mean, I wanted to highlight that a little bit before we got into more of our questions, because I kind of want to highlight the idea that this crosses all boundaries. This crosses all, demographics, all socioeconomic classes, all ages. I mean, we have represented here in our panel, you know, an aunt and a grandparent and an uncle and another aunt, and all different ages and stages of our life, and all different places in the state of Utah and all different areas of your life trajectories, two of your students, you know, and so it doesn't really discriminate. Substance use doesn't really discriminate. And so I just kind of want to highlight that for everyone who's watching, that this really is an issue that could affect anyone and everyone. Does anyone have thoughts about that before I move on to questions? Yeah, I threw that one at you, so I didn't expect you guys to have an answer. So, you know, as you guys highlighted, even in your introductions, I heard several of you say something along the lines of, we've had this challenge or this was difficult. So what, you know, were some of the biggest challenges that you have experienced being a member in a kinship family? I can kind of highlight who wants to talk first so we don't talk over each other. But like Allie, do you want to kind of highlight maybe some of your challenges that you've experienced being in a kinship family?
Yeah, so for us, I think like being informal has been kind of difficult. I think that's one of the things that we faced, or that I faced, because like DCFS didn't really get involved. And so at first I didn't realize like how, like I didn't know where I was supposed to go to get guardianship. I didn't know what that was and like what it meant when I had it or things like that. And I like facilitating meetings with her parents could like be very difficult at times because there wasn't a lot of boundaries or social support. And like being so young, I didn't really have a lot of people in my life either who even had kids. So that was like a really difficult thing, is finding the resources and like, I guess even the terminology, like kinship care wasn't something that I even heard about until I found grand families. So like it took us months to get to a place where we actually had, like, I felt like I had that support and like knew how to move forward and like felt like there was a sense of community. So.
That's awesome. I love that you said a sense of community. To be able to be around other people, like even on this conversation, I see as Allie's saying stuff, you guys are all like, yes, yes, because it seems like a lot of what people are saying here, you have this shared experience, and it's really nice to know that others are experiencing that as well. Jeannie, would you like to share for us some of your barriers? Or Natalie, I'm sorry, Natalie, you were gonna unmute. Would you like to say something, Natalie?
I can. I was just gonna pop off of Allie's, because when she said informal, that's kind of what my experience was too. Although my biological father had the custody, he was the substance abusing, physically and emotionally abusive person in the home. So my grandma assumed that role of mom, dad, and guardian angel is what I like to call her, because she didn't know that she was going to get stuck raising a 5-year-old, but that's just what she ended up having to do. So school was a little bit tight when she had to figure out that she couldn't register me without guardianship. So that was just an experience that, bless her heart, she had to go through kind of all on her own. And so for me, it was harder because obviously I was so young. I didn't understand why my parents were unable to care for me. So I didn't understand grandma has to do this because your parents can't. So I was a little bit more standoffish and rebellious, crying out for mom and dad, because, you know, 6-year-olds don't want to be raised by their grandma. They don't understand why they have to be raised by their grandparent. But I think the informality is what kind of made it a little bit harder for the challenge.
Wow, you know, yes, Natalie, I really appreciate that perspective. I work in grand families. One of the things I do is I am a therapist also for the children who come into care, and that is very much so sometimes the experiences that they have this misunderstanding of why, and not knowing why grandma or aunt is the person there versus mom and dad. And so yeah, that's a very much appreciate that. Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I will drop in the box, Foster Club has actually done a really good job at explaining this for younger kids. They've actually made a coloring book that kind of explains going into care and what it's like to be in care. It's actually really helpful. And I looked at this coloring book and said, man, if this was out when I was going through that, it would have helped make sense. So I'll drop that link in the Facebook Live just in case anyone wants to check it out, because it's really cool.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yes, resources are great. Thank you, Natalie. Jeannie, do you want to go ahead and tell us kind of about some of your challenges you've had as being in kinship?
You know, what were my legal what were my legal rights versus the families or the parents' legal rights. Unfortunately, the parents will often use their own children as a mechanism to get drugs. So they will say they're coming to get their child, or they'll do all sorts of heinous things essentially. And the law basically, unless you do have that guardianship, allows them to do so. I talked with police officers and they told me, yes, we will, if she comes to get them, to come and get her, then we have to do it. However, we won't stay at your door very long. We'll knock once and don't answer. But it was really difficult, as well as you had to also adjust your other children to the fact that you now have a child that is not considered a grandchild, but it's like they become a sibling. So they become equal, and then you have to navigate through with your other grandchildren of who has what rights and what responsibilities do you have to all of your other grandchildren as well.
Yeah, why does Bailey? Oh, go ahead.
Your friends go away because you now have an infant, a child to take care of, and you're not available to go out and do the normal things in the normal pattern that you would have. So soon the people that you know, they stop calling because they know you can't. Your life is on the playground with other young mothers and in the schools.
Absolutely, Jeannie. I love that perspective. I've seen a great quote from another grandparent just like you who mentioned, my friends talk about all the cruises they go on, and I tell them I get to cruise every day. I get to cruise to the school, and I get to cruise to the doctor's office, right? And these cruises, I would not give them up though, right? That even
Absolutely.
though I have a different cruise, they're just as valuable. So that's a, that's an important perspective of what happens to our friendships and our social groups too. Those are important and valuable to us. Lisa, Bert, what about you guys? What have been some of the barriers you guys have experienced as a kinship family?
I echo a lot of what's already been said. I think community and support is so crucial and important. When we first took my nephew in, we've had him off and on ever since he was just tiny. So my kids, my other kids knew him very well, and they loved him. They played really well together. I think when we were first asked to take him on more of a long-term, we don't know when this is going to end or how long this is going to go. It was just that huge, big question mark of, we just don't know how long this is going to be or what needs to happen next.
That's what Allie's going through right now. Like she said that, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess a big question mark.
There's just not a plan, right? So, and it's really hard to live your life month to month, and wanting to plan these amazing things and be like, oh, but what if they're not with me? Or, oh, but what if we don't do these things? I think the really big question mark of we just don't know what's next has been really hard. I think that's been really hard on our other children as well. Introducing someone new to the home, it's always, mom's and dad's attention has to be shifted, taking back and forth for visitation, or, it just takes a lot of time away from family time that we would normally have as well. So just trying to help everyone find the new normal, which we don't even know what the new normal is. And then you throw a pandemic on top of it and everyone's just like, there is no normal, get used to it. We're just kind of living life every day. But I think the hardest part for me was just the big question mark of not knowing what's next. Where do we go?
Yeah, absolutely. And Allie, have you had similar experiences to that? I mean, they kind of mentioned you in that comment of the month to month to month, but does that feel right to you that it's that unknown?
Yeah, I was actually talking to one of my friends about that yesterday, like when everybody was saying the pandemic has been difficult because they can't plan their life from like week to week. I was like, oh, well, that's been the past year of my life, so it doesn't feel super different for me. Which I mean, in some ways was good that the resilience was already there, but like it is very hard because it's like, if I want to plan a trip, am I going to plan that trip for 2 people or am I going to plan it for one person? And am I a mom next month or not? I don't know. So yeah, that's definitely been a difficult part, is figuring out, like, you just don't know if they're still going to be there and what you can plan on next month or 2 months from now.
Yeah, and feel free to not answer this, but like, how have you been able to balance being a nursing student while being a caregiver?
So that got a lot easier after we were able to get guardianship, because I was able to apply for aid through the state so that we could have a caregiver. And I've actually been really fortunate. We have somebody who lives down the street, and she's a stay-at-home mom. She has a little 2-year-old, and she has been pretty good about letting Kaya come over and stuff like that. So we didn't really lose care when the pandemic hit and everything. So that has been a huge blessing for us, is just finding one other person who is able to stay home with her, and she kind of makes up the difference for me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great. So through getting guardianship, it opened up the door to access to these other resources, so you could continue to like do your plans, your goals, and follow through on what you needed to do.
Yeah, because before that, at the end of every week, I would get like my work schedule, and so I'd have to text like everybody I knew and be like, hey, could you take her this day? Could you take her this day? And so it was like, it took up hours of my time trying to find somebody else who could take her. And like, we had family and stuff who was really supportive, but like nobody really has like a ton of time, like especially young single adults, where they can just take a baby all day long. And so it would be like, I'd have to have 3 or 4 people each day of the week, like watching her at first. So,
you know, several of you have brought up the pandemic, so I feel like we should talk about it for a minute. How has COVID-19 affected your ability to care for these kids? Or I know, Natalie, you're not caring for a kid, you were cared for, but I'm sure this has affected you as well, as being, you know, trying to pursue your goals. And so how has this affected your guys' ability to care for the children? If at all.
I'll jump in, because my goodness. So when they had the soft closure of schools, and we ended up having, you know, 8 kids being homeschooled at one time, we were like 37 different teachers in a day, plus we worked from home. I did still full time, and my husband still had to work full time. So we were still trying to figure out that balance. And so I think
there wasn't a balance.
There still is no balance.
It was a matter of day by day. There was no balance.
We fight that every day, but finding out how to well, and during this time we were right in the process, like we literally had just taken my nephew, and they had moved him into foster care during this time. And so it was like we were just transferring him to new schools, because before, when he was just placed with us, I was commuting, taking him back and forth. We live about a half an hour away from where he is registered in school and things. So I take him down every day. So getting him to a closer school to us was so crucial. But being able to handle and maneuver like education-based stuff, and making sure that they were still getting their educational needs, and that we were still having family time, because it was like school would go literally the whole entire day before we got everyone done. But I think it was really important to make sure that we were still doing those self-care things for our family, that they still had time that they could like decompress, and not every second of their day was doing homework or watching someone else do homework or watching mom pull her hair out because homework's not done, you know, whatever it was. But finding that time that we could just really be just family time was hard to do, even though we were together all the time. It's different. It was different.
Yeah, quantity does not equal quality, right?
Amen.
Like, you can be together all day, every day. That doesn't mean we're all having fun, right? I totally can appreciate that. Yeah. Anyone else want to share how this has maybe affected them, their abilities to care? Jeannie, go ahead.
You know, COVID caused isolation for us. Essentially, children that are in the situation need to have routine and regular things that they look forward to. Bailey would go to a spin class, and she has different swimming classes, and all of that stopped. So we had to recreate what is normal and recreate other daily routines, which was difficult. Daily routines besides everybody eating.
Jeannie, I have a random question for you. With return to school, how has that decision been easy or difficult for you with Bailey returning to school? Did you?
You know, Bailey is high risk. She does have asthma. It's well controlled. However, we felt that the social part of it and being part of her group and her friends was more important. We did have COVID. Both of us had it the first week in January, which it was, no one was even checking for it back at that point in time. It was a really dark, dark time, and she was really sick, really, really scary. What's concerning is that, you know, they don't have data that indicates that if you have had it once, you can possibly get it again. So we still have to be very diligent.
Well, I'm crossing my fingers for you guys. You know, I also feel, I love that you said that you have to weigh physical and emotional and mental health and all these challenges, and there's no right or wrong answer here. And it's definitely been difficult, I think, for everyone. Natalie and Allie, you guys are both up at the University of Utah. So I'm sure it's affected your guys' life to a degree as well.
Yeah, school's just been completely moved online. So, you know, learning disabilities are a real thing, and they get a lot harder when you're sitting in your bedroom. But I don't know, as far as COVID, I think the biggest thing that affected me with COVID was just being separated from my support systems. My support systems don't necessarily lie at home where I am. They lie in the DCFS office that I go teach basic life skills classes at. They lie at, you know, my university where I get one-on-one interactions with my teachers and my, you know, classmates, that I build those bonds that have honestly become my real family, and are those bonds for me. So it was just a disrupt in all of my my interaction with any people. So it was, I think that's really what hit me the most, because I thrive on those relationships that I build around me in day to day. So I was at a really low point during the pandemic when I couldn't have any of that interaction.
Yeah, that's really hard. Do you have a different experience, Allie, or that you'd like to share?
I kind of feel bad when people ask this question, just because like working in healthcare, there was not really like a shortage of like work. I ended up getting a lot more hours, so that was like great for our paycheck. And then nursing school is considered like a clinical experience, so we go in like in for our classes. We just have to social distance a ton. So like our biggest thing has really been like, if we get sick, like just this like thing hanging over our head. But that's true for everybody, is like that we just can't, you know, like I'm gonna have to find a way to entertain a 2-year-old in a very tiny apartment for 2 weeks straight. So,
oh, well, that's a difficult task. Absolutely. Don't minimize that. 2-year-old in a small apartment.
I couldn't do it. You got me. I'm out. Can't do that.
Right. But that's also very interesting perspective, right? That your experience was the opposite of like, actually, I had to engage more because of where I am working. And so, yeah, absolutely. I love hearing all the different ways we've had to deal and focus and work through COVID. You know, we talked a little bit, these last 2 questions, about difficulties, right? Things that have been difficult, things that have been hard, but you guys also highlighted, almost every single one of you in your introductions, how much of a blessing it has been, or how thankful you were, or the person that, you know, Natalie, you said, you know, my guardian angel grandma. So I would like us to kind of maybe, let's think about some of these positive or success stories, successful things you've experienced through kinship as well. Who would like to go first?
I'll go.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
What a wonderful experience to do this again and have the experience, because as you age and you become older, I don't have the fear when your child gets sick or when your child goes through different experiences, because I've already raised 8 kids. So now this is number 9. So I have the experience and the understanding that this too will pass. I also have the knowledge base to know when to get help, and to keep Bailey very, very active in sports and keep her involved in positive things that will increase her self-esteem, which as a younger parent, I didn't always have the answers, but I think I come better equipped now. I
love that so much, because I'm not a kinship caregiver, but I have a very wide range of children. So I have a almost a 22-year-old, and then young kids who are 10 and 5. And I have also had that experience of being like, well, I kind of made some mistakes up there that now I know better because I've learned and I've aged and I've grown. And so, you know, you have a different experience raising the younger children. Bert and Lisa, having the range from 17 to infant, is that kind of your experience as well? And then you can share more about your positives, but.
Yeah, I would say that our 17-year-old has been the guinea pig, and he would agree to that. And you hear all the time, well, they get away with it. Why didn't I get away with it? And it's just trial and error, learning along the way. So.
Well, and I know we had both talked about when we were, so having my 5-year-old, he's very close to our youngest as well, who's 8. And so they would play together really well. It was super great. And so that was kind of pretty an easy transition. And we had him so often when he was just little that it was just like, oh, you know, my cousin's here to play. We're going to have this great time, right? So we always joke with the 3 boys we adopted. When I picked him up from their mom, it was, you know, if you're coming to have a sleepover at, you know, Lisa's house, they'd call me Aunt Lisa. And so we joke it was the longest sleepover of their life. I mean, they've been now, you know, 9 years with us. And so it's been a while. But with this new little one was just, you know, one of those things we just did. And he was just always so fun and playful, and he was comfortable here. So I think that was a really big blessing to us, that we didn't have that shock of, I'm in a new place. I don't know where I'm at. This is family. This is, you know, they've always loved me and I'm in a safe place. I think the big shock to us was when we were asked to take the baby. That wasn't on our radar. We weren't
had
even,
nothing.
Yeah, we were starting over in
We gave
essence.
away everything because we were done.
Yeah, so I think that was, we just weren't sure what to do with that. But, you know, every night when you're rocking him to sleep and he grabs onto your little clump of hair right here, or he cuddles up next to you, and you think, oh my gosh, I would not trade this for any experience I've ever had in my life. So.
No, but there are moments when it's in the middle of the night and you realize how old you are. You're not equipped for that.
We are not as young as we once were. I'll never admit that to anyone else, but it's true. But no, we love it. It's a blessing. We love it. So.
I love that. And I loved what you said about your nephew, where it was home to him already. And so that transition was so much easier for him when he did have to come live a little bit more permanently with you, at least for now, for the time being. And so, yeah, that feels good to hear. He got to go to his other home, right? He didn't have to go somewhere that didn't feel safe. That's just beautiful to hear. Who wants to share next? We got Allie and Natalie. Any positive, awesome experiences you'd like to share?
I think a big one for me is what they were saying when you get to hold like the little baby and they're like holding onto your hair or your arm or whatever, like, because that's the first time that I've, you know, really had a kid in that context. I've always loved kids, and I've always said that I wanted to have a bunch of them, but I wanted to adopt because I didn't want to get pregnant and stuff like that. So it's working out so far. But she, like, I don't know, it's just like there really is, like, when you're holding that baby like at night and they're finally asleep, it's like, you know what, like everything to do is worth it. And like that is just like the best experience, and you get it every night. So I think that's been really good. And then just seeing, like, watching this little tiny person like progress and like hit all these milestones and everything like that is, and just like, I don't know, I think that's amazing. So
I love that, watching them develop and grow, and it's beautiful. Thank you, Hallie. And Natalie.
I think for me, it's just having been able to experience that true, authentic, just never give up on you love, unconditional love. You know, working with kids that are in the foster care system and having a lot of foster siblings, not everyone experienced that. And, you know, if my grandma wouldn't have stood up and been that person to love me and love me hard, I would not be the person I am today. I think she built a lot of resiliency in me by just seeing me and loving me unconditionally, no matter what. She just is the one person that always stood up for me and had my back. And that's why I do say she's my guardian angel. Although she's not with us anymore, I know she's she's got her eye on me, and she's the reason I uphold certain standards. I think if I wouldn't have had that person that weighed on me so much, taught me to respect myself and how, you know, what she expects of me, I probably might have gone down a lot of different paths. But when I think about making different decisions, I'm like, oh, my grandma would be pissed. So like, really, like, I just think about that and like, she loved me so much, but she would not be happy if I did something like this. So I think it's really just that person that, you know, keeps me on track, that I want to make proud. I wanted to graduate high school to make her proud. I graduated college to make her proud. And I'm going to keep doing it because it's just, she's the one person that never gave up on me. So I'm not giving up on making her proud.
You brought a little bit of tear to my eye, Natalie. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing. So a few of you guys on this panel have experienced both foster care, whether it's kinship through foster care or just foster care for stranger foster care, and then also have experienced living with a relative or taking care of a relative that somewhat informally. I wonder if you guys would like to share what some of those different experiences were like for you between those two scenarios.
I will kick that off because it kind of transitions from what I was saying. It's the difference between my foster care experience versus my kinship care experience was my grandma's love was unconditional. She didn't give up on me. She had that care and that drive and that passion to love me no matter what. Whereas with a lot of foster parents, I'd get kicked out for simple things you'd never kick your child out for. I just went through so many different homes, largely because they didn't have that responsibility to me and that bond with me. Which I think ultimately does come from kinship care most commonly, or just a lot of time and a lot of effort. But I think it was really just that difference in love. Like she really loved me, whereas it was kind of a job or an occupation for some of the foster parents, which a lot of them did love me too, still connected to many, but it was just a very, very different dynamic.
Maybe a different kind of love, right?
Yeah.
You know, that because I do, yes, and we hear that a lot from youth.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Natalie, of that, I know my grandma or my aunt or whoever, like I can be horrible and they're gonna love me anyways because I'm theirs. But we know there are a lot of foster parents who also give their all, but there's also some that don't. So I can really appreciate that perspective and where you're coming from. But Jeannie and Lisa, you guys have done both, right? You guys have been foster parents, and it sounds like you ended up adopting your foster placements. Is that true? So what was your guys' experience of taking in a child who maybe wasn't a relative versus taking in the child that was, and how has that been different for you?
You know, the children that we brought in, basically, I like to say that they found us and made our family complete. In most cases, they needed someone to be their cheerleaders, and they needed someone to love them, to take away the hurt of what they had experienced in their lives. In my case, my foster kids all keep contact with the exception of one who he became so broken, and things had happened to him in his life that were so heinous and so dark that he himself chose the same road to go down, and ultimately ended up in the prison system. And essentially it was heartbreaking, but there again, for the sake of the others, we had to sever ties with him. And as far as Bailey, she's my blood. She is my flesh. She is with me, and she is a joy to have around. If not me, who? I look back at the pictures, and there's times when things feel hard, but I look back at the pictures of who she is becoming, and I couldn't be happier. However, as an older caregiver, you have to also be concerned for your own health. And that has made me be very aware of my health. So therefore I go to the gym, I eat right, and I'm doing really good things for me, which I may not have been doing with so much zest.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought that up. Thank you, Jeannie. It is definitely a hard balance to make when we're starting to think forward of, do I have the time to take care of these kids all the time, right? Absolutely. Lisa and Bert, what's been your experience?
Yeah, so our first initial placement was through foster care. We knew the birth mom. She was actually a foster child that my family had taken in when I was a teenager. And so she was almost like a sister, but we were really distant. Like I was older than she was. I kind of took that almost motherly role to her, where I'd get her in trouble when she'd do things that were wrong and be like, you can't do that. You need to be better. Treat mom and dad nicer and things like that. So she also likewise chose to follow a much darker path. And so when she fell into substance abuse and things like that, the state showed up to her and said, we need to find somewhere else for your kids to go. And she said, I want them to go to Lisa, which I was shocked at that, because we weren't super close. And I thought she hated me because I always told her what to do. But she wanted to trust those kids with me. So it wasn't something we were looking at becoming foster parents, but we were asked to become foster parents. So it was very different, but from the very get-go, there was always a plan, right? The state always had something we had mapped out that we had to do, or a goal in mind of what we were trying to get to. When I take my nephew, for example, there was no plan. We were just, can you watch him? We just need a safe place for him to stay for a little while. And that little while was, well, how long's a little while? We don't know. And the back and forth, and what are we supposed to, there was really no rules or regulations for the biological parents as far as, contact or how much involvement they had with him. And so we were trying to set up a schedule of that. And so it was just very much, I felt unsupported right at first. We just didn't really know what to expect. And then, but I think the longer you go and the more context that you get, and I know that, grand families and different agencies like that are huge supporters to people who are just struggling to know what's next. What do we do next? And where do we go? And how do we make these things happen for these kiddos? I think that was the biggest difference, is relying on a different social network that we had with our other ones.
It's very hard to go from 3 to 6 overnight, though. I'm here to tell you, from 3 boys to 6 boys overnight. Rough.
Yeah. Oh,
to figure out where everybody fits was a little rough.
I couldn't even imagine. Yeah, that does sound. But you did it, right?
We
you
had
did
to.
it.
Yeah.
But
that pecking order with the oldest too, because they were both used to being the oldest, and now one of them is no longer the oldest. That was the hardest thing, I think, to fit into, because it's like, oh, you're not the oldest anymore. You're second in line. So stand in the back of the line. It was like, what? So that was a little difficult for them to adjust to. But
9 years later, it's still there.
They still,
yeah. It's still there. It's a real thing.
He still holds on to that. Well, I still am oldest somewhere, So I'm like, okay, we'll let you have that. We'll kind of let that go. But I think, but kids are so resilient. I think that is the biggest thing, is that if they are loved and they are cared for, and there is someone who genuinely really feels connected to them, they can just move mountains. And just to sit back and watch that is really impressive, to see how far they can come. I mean, I haven't even really met Natalie very much, but holy cow, I'm just so impressed to see how much they can accomplish when there's just that little bit of push or love, or we're rooting for you because we know you can do it.
Don't make her mad.
Just takes one of you. Just takes one of you.
I just hope my kids can say, oh, I don't want to piss her off. That's what I'm hoping for.
It comes a time, trust me, there was plenty of times I definitely didn't think about that. That took a while to develop.
Well, you give me hope, Natalie, so thank you.
I love that so much. That's great. Something you said, Lisa, actually very nicely fits into a question that we've gotten from Facebook Live about how you guys balance the relationship and responsibility between the child and your care, whether it's your niece or your grandchild or whatnot, and the love you have for the parent of that child, whether that be your sibling or your own child, when they aren't making those safe decisions. And I think Jeannie, you did say that you had to disconnect from your daughter because of the choices she was making. What have you done when you're finding that balance kind of hard, or how do you do it?
you know, you do it moment by moment. And there's times where it is so absolutely important to ask for help when you need help. And there seems to be a stigma that's involved with children's of addicts, and that is, you know, will they be good friends, and will they be someone I want to have around my child? So, like I said, ask for help. You have to do it moment by moment, and go to people that understand you. I mean, life is so full of disappointments and things that we don't have any control of. So stay in company where you have some sort of control and some sort of happiness. Like I said, some of it is moment by moment. Ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone have anything to add that they've done differently? Allie?
Yeah, so I think that's actually a pretty profound question, because it's difficult to like answer. And we did go over it a lot, like as a group with grand families. And what we kind of talked about is that your, I guess, loyalty in some respects needs to be to the child first, because that child isn't really able to speak up for themselves. And so you need to set that boundary for them in order to keep them safe, and see it as, you know what, like, I love you, and I like to their parents, like, I love you and I want to support you, but you've put us in this situation where, you know, this baby needs to take most of my like priority in my time right now. And so, like, I wish the best for you. I'll do what I can, but if I can't do it, then I'm going to say no. And sometimes finding like a mediator to be able to, I guess, like facilitate that conversation in a positive way is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, Bert, anything to add? Or
yeah, so like with my brother, we haven't been close in a long time, and we lead two very different lives, and we always have. So for him, like when he is under the influence, which is 99% of the time, right? He is mean. He's violent. He hallucinates and does really strange things, and so it's very hard to have a real connection to him as my brother. Like I tell people all the time that I've mourned the loss of my brother a long time ago, because the way he is now is not the brother that I remember growing up. And so for me, absolutely, my nephew is number one. He's priority. And so whatever I have to do to make sure that not just his physical nature is protected, but also his emotional nature is protected. I mean, we've had to do, of course, my brother's incarcerated again. So he gets phone call visits with a 5-year-old. And that's really difficult to navigate when a 5-year-old doesn't want to talk on the phone. It's just like, he's just not saying anything. I'm really sorry. But we have an amazing caseworker that helps to facilitate that as well, and kind of pull that around. But like, they all have to be supervised, because he's just not appropriate when it's just him. So I think we have to put that line in the sand and say, you know, I can give you so much and will support you so much, but until you're willing to make some changes on your own and say, I'm going to do this because there's something greater than me that needs my help. My role in all of this is just to make sure that my nephew has a safe place to be, and that he knows no matter what happens to him, Aunt Lisa's always going to love me, you know? So, yeah, I kind of have to push that away and yeah, just be there.
And none of that is an easy choice, right? That's
Yeah.
Not an easy choice for any of you. So we're nearing the end. It feels like we just started. You guys are so amazing. I'm inspired by you and the words that you're saying. Even though I work in Kinship and I work with you, families like you every day, every time I hear your stories or hear you guys speak, I'm always motivated to do more. So with that, we did get a question on Facebook, and I'd like to close with this before Incarni gets back on. If one of you guys, if we could highlight as a Kinship Coalition, something that we could advocate for you. So what would be one, so just so we can all fit it in the last minute or two, a greatest need that you might have that we as a coalition could advocate in our community to have for your families?
I feel very, very strongly. In my case, my Bailey's other grandparents want rights to Bailey. And every time I go to court, the father who is in prison basically is able just to say, I object. And basically I have to start over again in the legal system. I think that we need some changes in guardianship laws that take a really close look at what some of these parents are doing to their children, because I feel like it's a double whammy, that I have all the responsibility, but I don't have any rights. So changes in guardianship laws.
I agree. So many families have had experience similar to yours, Jeannie, and yeah, guardianship laws need some looking at. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. Who would like to share their most pressing need next? Or a need that has been met, but that you feel like other families definitely need support in as well?
I think mine is very similar to Jeannie's. I think there needs to be like more structure and more rights for kinship like caregivers, and just more protections for the children to make sure that they are staying safe, and that if they go back to their parents, that they're in a good place to have that, so that there isn't regression. So thank you,
Allie. Lisa, Bert, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I echo that too. You know, I mean, we have a wonderful family resource counselor right now, our RFC, who always says, you know, we ask foster parents to be A+ families, but we'll send them home to a D- parent, you know, as long as they meet the standards. Wanting to make sure that these kiddos are going home to an adequate place is really, you know, strong on my opinion. If I let these kids go back home, are they going to be treated with as much love as they need to have to thrive and get where they need to be? I know in the beginning, something that really helped us a ton was that a little bit of financial support that comes from, you know, grand families or things like that. You'd be surprised how taxing it can be just to take on one more extra child or two more extra kids.
And you need help to just get set up and get grounded with some stuff. So we appreciated that.
So, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned we went from 3 to 6. Could you imagine, like, suddenly having 3 kids that you have to have clothes for and food for and childcare for and all these other necessities? And
yeah. Well, we have some good friends of ours who are grandparents raising grandchildren, and he said that was his biggest struggle. Was, I mean, he's living on retirement, you know, so to have something to help him raise his grandkids and give them the things that they want, so that they're still, you know, looking cool at school. And I mean, even though grandma takes you shopping, it's like, I don't want to go shopping with my grandma, but just having a little extra something to help them out, I think was just so helpful to them as well. So I know that's just a huge positive, but definitely wanting to make sure that the future of the kids is taken care of, because we're not in control of how long we have them or how long they're going to stay with us. But definitely wanting to make sure that when they're not with us, that they're still going to have that same level of care.
Absolutely. And Natalie, from your perspective, what would be the greatest need from, you know, kids who've lived in kinship care that we could advocate for more?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, that structure thing is huge. I think my grandma would have been supported in taking care of me and would have actually been able to keep me in her custody had there been support services offered, instead of just taking me out of her care and putting me in foster care. I could have avoided 9 homes and years of transferring high school to high school to high school, and just a lot of trauma that was unnecessary. I wouldn't change it now, because obviously that was part of my journey and that's going to impact me. Changing that for generations to come. But I think the most important thing there would just be make sure we're refining the system as the system grows, because we know the system was never made to take care of children, but families were. So we need to keep that in mind. But also, you mentioned, you know, the A+ and D- parent. Let's remember what kids deserve. Kids deserve that A+ parent, not the D- parent. Just because they're biological doesn't mean the kid deserves you know, less care and less love. So I think just remembering like what's in the child's best interest is something to always remember, and the family's best interest.
I love that. Thank you so much, Natalie. And with that, and Carney, I know you're supposed to have 5 and you have 2, but these guys were so great. I apologize for letting it go longer, but if you want to close out for us.
Well, absolutely. This was a beautiful, beautiful hour. I have to say, it was powerful. I'm touched, I'm moved with each of your stories, because you have taught us a lot, and You have a lot of generosity in your hearts and love and dedication and loyalty. And I just want to say to those that are out there listening to us tonight, which at some point we've had over 160 people listening to your stories, that our community is made of many different families with many different stories. And creating a community that is accepting, that embraces families, whoever makes that family, and that embraces what I love what Natalie said, that keeps in mind what is best for the children and what the children need, then we can change our society. We really could be the one that are changing things to make this better. Natalie, thank you so much for your perspective. Very unique stories, very unique perspectives, but all of them touching in many ways. And I love what you said. I think I'm going to put that on my desk that says families are made to love children, not the system. I love that. I think that we all need to remember that. And I know that when we take, I mean, Jeannie's not on, I don't know if she's still on or not, but I have to say that each of you have been able to illustrate what being kinship families means, really, what it is to be a kinship family. And I think all of us that have participated today are leaving today with a much better idea and much better view of what your needs are. And where can we support you? What are the things that really you are living through that you're thinking, when can we change this so we can actually do this well and better, and that we can focus on the child instead of focusing on going to court or going through different struggles, right? So I hope that we all have learned something that we can take with us. We made it through it without any technical glitches. So I have to say thank you to all of those. Yeah, thank you, Ali and Natalie. I know that for you guys that are younger, but to me, this whole thing is kind of like a little challenge. So I'm really happy that we got it through, that we were able to have it live for people to participate. Great questions from our audience. And I hope that this is not the last time we do something like this, because I think the more you know about the real stories, the more you can help and the more you feel like you can help, that you want to be involved, that you can really do something. And I think we are all responsible for creating a better society and for leaving a better world to these kids. And everybody deserves an adult, a grown up, like Natalie was saying, that will love you no matter what, right? There was a little story that I read recently of a teacher that was calling the parents of the adults in the life of the children, the grown-ups in your life. So when they were in class, he said, well, the grown-ups in your life, and it's because not all kids have moms and dads. A lot of kids have other type of families. And so when you say the grown-ups in your families, it's so respectful to all of you that might not be a mom and a dad, right? For those kids. And those kids are starting to see those grown-ups like those ones that are there for them and to love them. So thank you so much for all you're doing. Thank you for the love and the passion. Thank you, Bakal, Alisa, and Casey, for your passion, for working through all this last 2 or 3 weeks to make this happen for all of us. I'm humbled by my staff and the caliber of work that they do, and to the coalition for joining forces, all of us, to make sure that we account for this grand families, these kinship families. I don't have much to say unless, Baka, you need to add anything. With that, thank you so much for a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for your support, and Grand Families at Children's Service Society is here to help you and support you. Thank you.